The waitress switched his glass in silence. Undercover boss watched, realizing she'd saved his life. The water glass sat exactly where Daniel had left it. He'd been coming to Marco's downtown for 3 nights straight, always ordering the same thing: grilled salmon, no butter, extra lemon. The kind of simple meal that didn't draw attention. That was the point. Nobody looked twice at a man in a wrinkled button-down eating alone at table 7. Daniel Reeves had spent 2 weeks living like this: cheap hotel rooms, cash payments, borrowed cars. His board of directors thought he was touring their European locations. His assistant thought he was on a meditation retreat. In reality, the CEO of Meridian Hospitality Group was sitting in one of his own restaurants, watching his employees when they didn't know he was watching. It was called going undercover. He called it overdue. Tonight felt different, though. The energy in the room had shifted around 9:30, right after the kitchen staff changed over. Daniel had noticed the new line cook, broad shoulders, neck tattoo, the kind of guy who moved through the kitchen like he was angry at the vegetables. Then there was Mia. She'd been his server all 3 nights. Mid-20s, dark hair always pulled back tight, eyes that seemed to be calculating something even when she smiled. She moved efficiently, never wasted steps, never lingered for small talk. Professional. Invisible, almost. Except tonight, she kept glancing toward the kitchen. Daniel had learned to notice things like that. In his line of work, the details people tried to hide were usually the ones that mattered most. She approached his table now, carrying his salmon on a white plate. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was tight. "Here you go, sir," she said, setting the plate down with practiced precision. Then she reached for his water glass. Daniel's hand moved instinctively to stop her. He'd just filled it from the pitcher she'd left earlier, but something in her expression made him freeze. Her fingers wrapped around the glass. She didn't look at him. Didn't explain. Just lifted it smoothly, as if this were part of the service, and replaced it with a fresh glass from her apron pocket. The whole exchange took 3 seconds. "Enjoy your meal," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She walked away before he could respond. Daniel stared at the original glass, now sitting on the edge of the table. The water inside looked normal. Clear. Harmless. But as he watched, something began to happen. A thin white residue started forming at the bottom. Dissolving, but not completely. Tiny particles swirling in lazy circles, breaking apart like chalk dust in water. His stomach dropped. Daniel had seen enough crime dramas to know what he was looking at. This wasn't a piece of lint, or a mineral deposit. Someone had put something in his drink. Someone had tried to poison him. His eyes shot up, scanning the restaurant. The other diners were lost in their conversations. The hostess was seating a couple near the window. The bartender was shaking a cocktail, laughing at something a customer said. Everything looked normal. Except Mia. She stood near the server station, her back to him, but her shoulders were trembling. She was gripping the edge of the counter like she might fall over. Daniel's mind raced. She knew. Somehow, she'd known his drink had been tampered with. She'd seen it happen, or she'd known it was going to happen, and instead of causing a scene, instead of calling the police or confronting anyone, she'd simply switched the glass. Quietly. Invisibly. She'd saved his life without saying a word. He pushed his plate away, appetite gone. His hand moved to his phone, then stopped. What was he supposed to do? Call the police? Call his head of security? Announce to the entire restaurant that someone had just tried to kill him? No. Not yet. Because if someone wanted him dead, revealing who he really was would only make him a bigger target. And if Mia knew something, if she'd seen who did this, then exposing her as a witness could put her in danger too. Daniel made a decision. He took a $20 bill from his wallet, folded it under the edge of his untouched salmon, and stood. He walked toward the exit with the same unremarkable pace he'd used all week. Just another customer. Just another face in the crowd. But as he pushed through the glass door into the cool night air, he turned back. Mia was watching him from across the dining room. Their eyes met for half a second. Hers were wide, terrified, pleading. Then she looked away and disappeared into the kitchen. Daniel's heart pounded as he crossed the parking lot. His rental car was parked under a broken streetlight, another deliberate choice. He climbed inside, locked the doors, and sat in the darkness, trying to process what had just happened. Someone in that restaurant had tried to kill him. Not rob him. Not scare him. Kill him. And a waitress he'd never spoken to beyond, "I'll have the salmon," had stopped it. Why? He pulled out his phone and opened the security app connected to Marco's internal cameras. As a CEO, he had access to every location in his portfolio. He scrolled to tonight's footage, Table 7, and watched. The angle was wrong. The camera caught the edge of his table, but not the water glass. He could see Mia approach, see her set down the plate, but the crucial moment, the switch, was blocked by a support beam. Convenient. Too convenient. Someone had known where the blind spot was. Daniel's jaw clenched. This wasn't random. This was planned. Calculated. He switched to the employee entrance camera and waited. 20 minutes later, Mia emerged. She changed out of her uniform into jeans and an oversized jacket. Her movements were hurried, nervous. She kept looking over her shoulder. She was scared. Daniel watched her unlock a beat-up Honda Civic and climb inside. She sat there for a long moment, forehead pressed against the steering wheel, and he could see her shoulders shaking even from this distance. She was crying. Then she started the car and drove away. Daniel sat alone in the dark parking lot, the poisoned glass still vivid in his mind. He should leave. Get somewhere safe. Let his security team handle this. But he didn't move. Because somewhere in that restaurant was a person who wanted him dead. And somewhere out there, driving home alone and terrified, was the woman who'd saved him. And Daniel Reeves had spent his entire career solving problems other people were too afraid to touch. This one had just become personal. He started the engine, his decision made. He wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. Undercover wasn't over. It was just beginning. Daniel didn't follow Mia home. That would have been crossing a line, even for someone who just survived a murder attempt. Instead, he drove to his hotel, a modest chain property 15 minutes from the restaurant. Not the kind of place a CEO would normally stay. The lobby smelled like coffee and synthetic lemon. The night clerk barely looked up from his phone as Daniel walked past. Room 314. Gray walls, striped bedspread, a painting of a lighthouse that had probably been bolted to the wall since 2003. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out his laptop. His hands were shaking. Adrenaline, probably. Or shock. Maybe both. He opened an encrypted folder labeled Site Assessments and navigated to Marco's downtown employee files. He'd been reviewing them all week, looking for the usual problems: time theft, inventory discrepancies, safety violations. Now he was looking for something else entirely. A killer. He started with recent terminations. 3 employees had been let go in the past 2 months. One was a dishwasher who'd stopped showing up. Another was a server who'd failed the drug test. The third name made him pause. Evan Marsh. Line cook. Terminated, September 14th. Reason: gross misconduct. No details. Just those 2 words. Daniel frowned. Gross misconduct could mean anything from stealing to violence, but Meridian's protocol required specifics. Every termination needed documentation: witness statements, incident reports, supervisor notes. This file had none of that. Just a signature from the district manager and a checkbox marked "Security Notified." But when Daniel pulled the security logs, there was no follow-up. No escort off premises. No formal trespassing warning. Nothing. Evan Marsh had simply disappeared from the payroll like he never existed. That was protocol failure. Dangerous protocol failure. Daniel switched to the hiring records and found Evan's application. The photo showed a man in his early 30s, muscular build, dark hair buzzed short. His previous experience listed 2 other restaurants, both competitors, and a 6-month gap before joining Marco's. Nothing unusual. Nothing that screamed threat. Then Daniel noticed something else. Evan's emergency contact, Mia Sawyer. Daniel's pulse quickened. Mia. The waitress. The woman who'd saved his life. She knew Evan Marsh. They were connected somehow. Close enough that he'd listed her as the person to call if something went wrong. The pieces started forming a picture, but it was blurry, incomplete. If Mia and Evan were connected, why would she stop him from poisoning someone? Why would she risk exposing him? Unless she didn't know it was him. Unless she'd seen the poison go into the glass and acted on instinct, not knowing who was behind it. Or unless their relationship wasn't what the paperwork suggested. Daniel pulled up Mia's file next. Mia Sawyer. Server. Hired March 2024. Performance, excellent. Attendance, perfect. Complaints, 0. Model employee. The kind of person who showed up early, stayed late, never caused problems. Her emergency contact was blank. No family. No partner. No one. Daniel leaned back, rubbing his eyes. The adrenaline was wearing off now, replaced by exhaustion and the dull throb of a headache. Someone had tried to kill him tonight. That someone was likely Evan Marsh, a fired employee with a connection to Mia. But why? What had Daniel done to earn that kind of hatred? He'd never met Evan Marsh. Didn't recognize the name. Didn't recognize the face. Yet somehow, Daniel had ruined everything for him. At least, that's what it seemed like. His phone buzzed. A text from his head of security, Marcus. Update on the London trip? Board's asking. Daniel stared at the message. Marcus didn't know where he really was. Nobody did. If Daniel told him what happened tonight, Marcus would pull him out immediately. Full protective detail. Lockdown. Investigation. And whoever poisoned that glass would disappear before they could be caught. Daniel typed back. London's fine. Extended through next week. Handle the board. He powered down the laptop and walked to the window. The parking lot below was nearly empty. A single car sat under the far light, engine running. Someone on a phone call, probably. Or waiting for someone. Daniel watched until they drove away. Tomorrow, he'd go back to Marco's. Same table. Same meal. Same unremarkable face in the crowd. But this time, he'd be watching everyone. The kitchen. The servers. The managers. Because someone in that building wanted him dead. And the only person who seemed to care that he lived was a waitress who wouldn't even look him in the eye. Daniel closed the curtain and turned away from the window. Staying undercover was dangerous. Staying quiet was dangerous. But walking away now would be worse. Because Mia had saved his life tonight, probably at great personal cost. And Daniel wasn't the kind of man who left debts unpaid. Especially when the person he owed was clearly in danger herself. He set an alarm for 6 a.m. Sleep didn't come easy. Mia woke up at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before her alarm. She always woke early when the nightmares came back. Her apartment was small, a studio in a building where the heat barely worked and the neighbors screamed at each other through paper-thin walls. But it was hers. She'd signed the lease herself. Paid the deposit with tips she'd been saving for 6 months. No one could take it from her. That mattered more than square footage. She sat up slowly, her heart still racing from the dream. Always the same one lately. Evan standing in her kitchen, his face twisted with rage, his voice echoing off the walls. You think you can just leave? You think you're done with me? Except it wasn't entirely a dream. Because 2 nights ago, the night before she'd switched that glass, she'd heard almost exactly those words. She'd been closing at Marco's, finishing her side work in the dining room while the kitchen cleaned up. The restaurant was mostly empty. Just her, the manager counting the register in the office, and the closing crew in back. That's when she'd heard Evan's voice coming from the kitchen. She'd frozen, knife and fork still in her hand from rolling silverware. Evan wasn't supposed to be there. He'd been fired 3 weeks ago. Escorted out, she'd assumed, though she'd been off that day. She'd felt nothing but relief when she heard he was gone. They'd dated for 8 months. 8 months of him slowly tightening his grip on her life. Who she talked to. Where she went. What she wore. It had started small, sweet, even. I just worry about you. Then it became controlling. Then frightening. She'd finally ended it in July, 2 months before he was fired. He'd thrown a plate across her old apartment. Told her she'd regret it. That she was nothing without him. She'd gotten a new apartment the next week. Changed her number. Blocked him everywhere. But she hadn't changed her emergency contact at work. A stupid oversight. One she'd been meaning to fix. And 2 nights ago, that oversight had probably saved a stranger's life. Because when she'd heard Evan's voice in the kitchen, she'd crept closer to listen, terrified he was there for her. But he wasn't talking about her. He was talking to someone else, she couldn't see who, in a voice that was too familiar. The bragging voice. The one he used when he wanted people to think he was important. You think I'm scared? The man who ruined everything is sitting out there right now, eating like nothing happened. Like he didn't destroy my life. Well, tonight he gets what's coming to him. Mia's blood had run cold. Already handled. His water glass. He won't even know what hit him. Tomorrow, everyone will think it was a heart attack or something. CO dead at his own restaurant. Poetic, right? CO. The word had hit her like a punch. She'd glanced toward the dining room. Only 3 tables left. An elderly couple finishing dessert. A woman scrolling her phone over a salad. And a man sitting alone at table 7. The same man who'd been there the past 2 nights. Quiet. Polite. Unremarkable. Except now, apparently, he was someone Evan wanted dead. Mia hadn't thought. Hadn't planned. She just moved. She'd grabbed a clean water glass from the server station, slipped it into her apron, and walked straight to table 7. Her hands had been steady even though her heart was trying to break through her ribs. She'd switched the glass. Simple. Silent. And then she'd walked away before her legs gave out. She didn't know if the man had noticed. Didn't know if he'd understood. She just knew she couldn't let someone die. Not when she could stop it. Even if it meant Evan would know. Even if it meant putting herself in danger. Now, sitting in her apartment as weak sunlight filtered through the blinds, Mia felt the weight of that decision crushing her. She pulled her phone from the nightstand. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. No voicemails. Her stomach twisted. She opened her messages. Nothing new since last night's text. You should have minded your own business. It had come through at 9:47 p.m., about 30 minutes after the man from table 7 had left the restaurant. Evan knew. Of course he knew. Mia stood up and walked to the window, pulling the curtain back just an inch. The street below was empty except for a delivery truck and someone walking a dog. No one watching. No one waiting. But that didn't mean she was safe. She thought about calling the police. But what would she say? My ex-boyfriend tried to poison someone and I stopped it, but I don't actually have proof, and also I'm terrified he'll kill me if I report him. They'd need evidence. Witnesses. Something concrete. All she had was a text message and a terrible feeling in her gut. Mia let the curtain fall closed and walked to her tiny bathroom. She stared at herself in the mirror, dark circles under her eyes, hair a mess, the faint scar on her cheekbone from where Evan had, accidentally, elbowed her last spring. She'd spent a year trying to escape him. And somehow, in trying to save a stranger, she'd pulled herself right back into his orbit. Her shift started at 11. 4 hours from now. 4 hours to decide if she was brave enough to go back to Marco's, knowing Evan might be watching. Knowing he was angry. Knowing angry Evan was the most dangerous version of him. She turned on the shower, letting the water heat up. Whatever happened next, she couldn't hide forever. But she could be ready. Mia's hands were still shaking when she clocked in at 10:53 a.m. The lunch shift was always slower than dinner. Business people grabbing quick meals, a few tourists, regulars who came for the early bird specials. Easier tips, less chaos. Normally, she preferred it. Today, every sound made her jump. She tied her apron, checked her notepad and pens, and was heading toward the dining room when she heard her name. Mia. Office. Now. Greg Martinez stood in the doorway of the manager's office, arms crossed. He was young for a general manager, barely 30, and he ran Marco's like he was auditioning for corporate. Everything by the book. Every rule enforced. Mia's stomach dropped. Is something wrong? Office, he repeated. She followed him inside. The office was cramped, windowless, smelling of burnt coffee and printer ink. Greg closed the door and sat behind the desk, pulling up something on his computer. He didn't invite her to sit. We need to discuss your behavior last night, he said, eyes on the screen. Mia's throat tightened. My behavior? You touched a customer's drink without permission. Removed it from the table and replaced it without explanation. He clicked his mouse, turning the monitor toward her. Security footage. Table 7. 9:34 p.m. The video showed her approaching the table, setting down the plate, reaching for the glass. The angle didn't show what was in the glass, just her taking it. It looked bad. Like she was doing something suspicious. I can explain, Mia started. Can you? Greg leaned back in his chair. Because from where I'm sitting, you violated health code protocol and customer service standards. You don't touch a customer's beverage unless they ask you to or unless it's being cleared. You know that. There was something wrong with the glass, Mia said carefully. I thought I saw something in it. I was just being cautious. Did you inform me? Did you inform any manager on duty? No, but... Did you inform the customer? Mia hesitated. No. Greg shook his head. So instead of following protocol, which would be to discreetly alert management so we could handle it properly, you took it upon yourself to remove potential evidence and replace it without documentation. Do you understand how that looks? I was trying to help. You were trying to be a hero. Greg cut her off. And in this business, heroes get people sued. What if that customer complained? What if he got sick anyway and claimed you tampered with his drink? We'd have no defense, Mia. No documentation. Just footage of you doing something unauthorized. Mia's hands clenched at her sides. She wanted to scream. Wanted to tell Greg that she'd saved that man's life. That someone had tried to poison him and she'd stopped it. But she couldn't. Not without proof. Not without putting herself at even greater risk. I'm sorry, she said quietly. It won't happen again. Greg pulled a yellow write-up form from his desk drawer. No, it won't. Because this is your official warning. One more incident, any incident, and you're terminated. Understood? Mia took the paper he slid across the desk. Her name was already printed at the top. The boxes for violation of protocol and unauthorized conduct were checked. She signed it because she needed this job. Because she had rent due in a week and nowhere else to go. Understood, she whispered. Good. Now get out there. Table 3 needs water. Mia left the office, the write-up crumpled in her apron pocket, feeling like she'd been punched in the chest. She'd saved someone's life. And she was being punished for it. From his corner table, Daniel watched the entire thing unfold. He couldn't hear what was being said, but he didn't need to. Mia's body language told him everything. The way her shoulders hunched. The way she signed the paper without fighting back. The way she walked out of that office looking smaller than when she'd gone in. His jaw tightened. Greg Martinez. Daniel knew the name. He'd hired him 8 months ago based on a glowing recommendation from the district supervisor. Young, ambitious, eager to prove himself. Also, apparently, someone who valued policy over people. Daniel pulled out his phone and opened his notes app, typing quickly. Marco's downtown, management issues, no documented follow-up on terminated employee, Evan Marsh, security gaps in camera coverage, Table 7 blind spot, GM prioritizing liability over employee safety, retaliation against employee who prevented potential crisis. He watched Mia move through the dining room, refilling waters, taking orders, smiling at customers like nothing had happened. But he could see it now. The tremor in her hands. The way she kept glancing toward the kitchen. The way she flinched when the door swung open. She was terrified. And instead of protecting her, management had threatened her. Daniel had built Meridian Hospitality Group from 3 locations to 78 in 12 years. He'd prided himself on creating systems that worked. Policies that protected everyone. But sitting here, watching Mia get punished for doing the right thing, he realized something uncomfortable. His systems had failed. No, worse than that. His systems had created this. The cost-cutting that led to incomplete termination procedures. The emphasis on policy compliance over critical thinking. The corporate culture that made managers more afraid of lawsuits than of their employees getting hurt. He'd built this machine. And now it was punishing the one person who'd seen the danger and acted. Daniel flagged down another server, a young guy with nervous energy, and ordered coffee. While he waited, he pulled up the corporate directory on his phone and found the HR files for Marco's downtown. There had been complaints about Evan Marsh. 3 of them, filed by different employees over his 6-month tenure. All marked, resolved internally. None escalated. None investigated. And when he'd finally been terminated, there'd been no safety review. No threat assessment. No follow-up. Just a checkbox and a signature. Daniel set his phone down as the coffee arrived. He'd spent 2 weeks looking for operational problems. Waste. Inefficiency. Theft. He'd found something worse. A system so focused on avoiding liability that it had become blind to actual danger. And the woman who'd seen through all of it was now one mistake away from losing her job. Not on his watch. Mia's shift ended at 6 p.m. She made it through without breaking down, which felt like a victory. Her tables had been easy, a few lunch stragglers, some regulars who tipped well and didn't need much attention. She'd smiled. Made small talk. Acted normal. But the write-up felt like it was burning a hole in her apron. She changed in the staff bathroom, pulling on her jeans and jacket, avoiding her reflection in the mirror. The fluorescent lights made everyone look sick. Today, she actually felt it. "See you tomorrow, Mia," called Sarah, one of the other servers, as Mia headed for the back exit. "Yeah. See you?" The employee exit opened into an alley that connected to the main street. It wasn't the safest route, the lighting was poor and the dumpsters attracted questionable characters, but it was the fastest way to the bus stop. Mia pulled her jacket tighter and walked quickly. The November air had a bite to it. The sun was already setting, casting long shadows between the buildings. Her bus came at 6:15. She had 12 minutes. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, still walking. Unknown number. Her thumb hovered over the decline button. Then it buzzed again. A text this time? Running away won't help. Mia stopped walking. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She spun around, scanning the alley behind her. Empty. Another text came through. "I see you." Her breath caught. She turned in a full circle, eyes searching the shadows, the doorways, the fire escapes above. Nothing. No one. She started walking again, faster now, her sneakers slapping against the wet pavement. The bus stop was just ahead, at the corner of 5th and Main. Street lights. People. Safety. Her phone buzzed continuously now. Message after message. "You think you're smart? You think he's going to save you? You made a mistake. I gave you everything and you threw it away." Mia broke into a run. She burst out of the alley onto Main Street, gasping, and immediately felt foolish. The sidewalk was full of people. Commuters heading home. A woman walking her dog. 2 teenagers laughing over something on a phone. Normal. Safe. Fine. She forced herself to slow down, to breathe. The bus stop was half a block away. She could see it. Green bench. Plexiglass shelter. Posted schedule. And then she saw him. Evan. He was across the street, leaning against the storefront, hands in his pockets. Watching her. Their eyes met. He didn't move. Didn't smile. Just stared at her with that flat, cold expression she remembered from the worst nights. The expression that meant he was past anger. Past yelling. The expression that meant he'd already decided what he was going to do. Mia's feet felt welded to the sidewalk. A bus rumbled past, blocking her view for just a moment. When it cleared, Evan was crossing the street. Toward her. She turned and ran. Not toward the bus stop. Toward the crowd. Toward people. She pushed past a couple holding hands, mumbled an apology, and ducked into the first open business she saw, a corner drugstore with bright lights and wide aisles. The clerk looked up from his phone, bored. "Help you?" "Just looking," Mia managed, her voice shaking. She moved quickly down the first aisle, grabbed a bottle of shampoo at random, and headed toward the back of the store. There was a second exit, she remembered. She'd been here before. She found it. Emergency exit. Alarm would sound. She didn't care. Mia slammed through the door. The alarm shrieked behind her as she stumbled into another alley, this one narrower, darker. She ran. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred. She didn't know where she was going, just that she had to move, had to get away, had to. She crashed into someone. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her. "Whoa, Mia!" She looked up, gasping, ready to scream. It was him. The man from table 7. He was standing in the alley like he'd been waiting for her, wearing the same unremarkable clothes, the same concerned expression. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I saw you run. He's following me," Mia choked out. He's going to." "Evan," the man said. Mia froze. "How do you know his name?" The man's expression shifted. Became sharper. More focused. "Because I've spent the last 2 days figuring out who tried to kill me," he said quietly. "And I know he's connected to you. I know you saved my life. And I know you're in danger." Mia stared at him, her mind struggling to catch up. "Who are you?" "Daniel Reeves," he said. "I own this restaurant. I own the whole company. And I need you to trust me right now, because if Evan is following you, we need to get you somewhere safe." Mia's knees almost gave out. "You're the CEO?" "I was undercover." Long story. Daniel glanced past her, toward the mouth of the alley. "We don't have time. My car is around the corner. I can take you to the police, or somewhere else, but we need to move." I can't." Mia's thoughts were spinning. This was insane. This man was a stranger. She didn't know him. Didn't know if she could trust him. But Evan was out there. And she was out of options. "Okay," she whispered. Daniel nodded once and gestured for her to follow. They'd taken 3 steps when Mia's phone buzzed one more time. She pulled it out with shaking hands. A photo. Taken from across the street. Mia, standing on the sidewalk outside the drugstore. Evan's reflection visible in the glass behind her. And below it, a message. "You should have minded your own business." The same words from last night. Mia looked up at Daniel, her face white. "He's not going to stop," she said. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Neither am I," he replied. Daniel's hotel room was nothing like Mia expected. She'd been picturing a penthouse suite, minibar, maybe a view of the city skyline. Instead, it was the same chain hotel she'd stayed at once after a particularly bad fight with Evan, when she needed somewhere cheap and anonymous to spend the night. "You're a CEO," she said, standing awkwardly near the door while Daniel locked it behind them. "And you're staying here?" "That's kind of the point of going undercover," Daniel said. He gestured to the small table by the window. "Sit. Please." Mia sat, mostly because her legs felt like they might give out. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her hollow and shaky. Daniel pulled out his laptop and set it on the table between them. I need to ask you some questions. About Evan. About what happened the night you switched my glass. And I need you to be completely honest with me, because both of our lives might depend on it. Mia nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. How long have you known Evan Marsh? About 1.5 years. We started dating last spring. Broke up in July. Daniel's fingers moved across the keyboard. He listed you as his emergency contact when he was hired at Marco's. I didn't know that, Mia said quickly. I never would have agreed to it. I cut all contact when we broke up. Why did you break up? Mia looked down at her hands. Because he was controlling. Then he got mean. Then he got scary. I realized if I stayed, it was going to get worse. Daniel's expression softened slightly. Did you report it? File a restraining order? No. I moved. Changed my number. I thought that would be enough. She laughed bitterly. Stupid, right? Not stupid. Survival. Daniel pulled up a file on his screen. Evan was terminated from Marco's on September 14th. 3 weeks ago. Do you know why? I was off that day. I just heard he'd been fired. I thought it was over. It wasn't. Daniel turned the laptop toward her. These are HR complaints filed against Evan during his time at Marco's. 3 separate incidents. A server said he cornered her in the walk-in cooler and wouldn't let her leave. A dishwasher reported him for throwing a pan across the kitchen during an argument. And a hostess said he followed her to her car after her shift and sat there, watching, until she called someone to pick her up. Mia's stomach turned. That was exactly the kind of thing Evan did. Intimidation disguised as concern. Power disguised as protection. What did management do? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Nothing meaningful. Each complaint was marked resolved internally. Evan got verbal warnings. Retraining. A write-up. Daniel's voice hardened. No formal investigation. No documentation beyond a few notes. And when they finally fired him, it was abrupt. No security escort. No follow-up. He was just gone. Why was he fired? Daniel pulled up another file. According to the incident report, which is barely a paragraph long, Evan had an altercation with the kitchen manager. Threats were made. The manager felt unsafe. District supervisor signed off on immediate termination. He closed the laptop and looked at her directly. But here's what I don't understand. Evan was angry at me. He blamed me for ruining his life. But I've never met him. Never even heard his name until 2 days ago. So why does he think I destroyed everything? Mia thought back to that night, to the words she'd overheard in the kitchen. He said something about how the man who ruined everything was eating at his own restaurant. She said slowly. Like you being the CEO was the reason he was angry. But why? Daniel opened a different folder on his laptop. I didn't fire him. I didn't know he existed. So what's the connection? He pulled up a timeline, dates, events, policy changes. Mia watched as he scrolled through weeks of corporate decisions. Then he stopped. Here, Daniel said quietly. September 1st. I issued a company-wide directive. All locations had to cut labor costs by 15% before the end of Q3. Reduce hours. Eliminate redundant positions. Tighten scheduling. Mia leaned closer. What does that have to do with Evan? Marco's was overstaffed in the kitchen. 2 managers where one would have worked. The district supervisor made cuts. Started looking for reasons to trim employees. Daniel's jaw tightened. Evan's complaints gave them the excuse they needed. He wasn't fired because he was dangerous. He was fired because he was convenient. The pieces clicked into place for Mia. So he blames you. Because your cost-cutting order led to him losing his job. Exactly. Daniel sat back, running a hand through his hair. And he's not entirely wrong. I created the policy that made him expendable. I prioritized numbers over safety. And when he got fired without proper procedure, no one followed up to make sure he wasn't a threat. You didn't know, Mia said. That's not an excuse. Daniel's voice was sharp with self-recrimination. I should have known. I built systems that were supposed to protect people, employees and customers. But I built them from a spreadsheet. From a boardroom. I didn't see what they actually looked like on the ground. He pulled up the security footage from the night Evan was terminated. It showed him leaving through the back door, alone, carrying his knives in a bag. No manager watching. No security present. He walked out angry and humiliated, Daniel said. And no one stopped him. No one checked on him. No one made sure he wasn't going to come back. Mia watched Evan's figure disappear from the frame. But he did come back, she said softly. Yes. He came back. And he almost succeeded. Daniel closed the laptop. The only reason I'm alive is because you were paying attention. Because you heard something and you acted. I didn't have proof, Mia said. I still don't. It's just his word against mine. The police won't. The police will listen, Daniel interrupted. Because I'm not just a customer who got poisoned. I'm the CEO of a major company reporting a credible threat against my life. They'll take this seriously. But what about the glass? I threw it away. There's no evidence. Daniel's expression shifted. You threw it away? Mia nodded miserably. After my shift. I panicked. I didn't want anyone asking questions. For a long moment, Daniel was silent. Then he smiled, a small, grim smile. It doesn't matter, he said. Because I didn't. He pulled his phone from his pocket and opened his photos. There, clear as day, was a picture of the poisoned water glass, the white residue still visible at the bottom. I took it from the table before I left, Daniel said. I've had it locked in my car's glove box for 2 days. Waiting to figure out what to do with it. Mia stared at the photo. That's evidence, she whispered. That's evidence, Daniel confirmed. And with your testimony about what you overheard, and Evan's history, and the threatening messages he's been sending you, we have a case. He'll know it was me. He already knows. That text made it clear. Daniel's voice softened. Mia, you're already in danger. The only way out is forward. Mia looked at this man, this CEO who'd been eating quietly at table 7 for 3 nights, who'd gone undercover in his own company, who'd kept a poisoned glass as evidence instead of running. Why are you helping me? She asked. Daniel met her eyes. Because you saved my life, he said simply. And because I helped create the situation that put you in danger. I owe you more than I can repay. Mia felt something loosen in her chest. Fear, maybe. Or loneliness. For the first time in days, she wasn't facing this alone. Okay, she said. What do we do? Daniel pulled out his phone. We call the police, he said. And then we make sure Evan Marsh never hurts anyone again. The police arrived at the hotel within 20 minutes. 2 detectives, a woman in her 40s named Rivera and a younger man named Chin. They set up at the table in Daniel's room, recording devices out, notebooks open. Mia told them everything. The relationship with Evan. The breakup. The night she'd overheard him in the kitchen. The glass switch. The threatening texts. The photo he'd sent of her outside the drugstore. Daniel corroborated her story and produced the water glass, still sealed in a plastic bag he'd taken from his car. The white residue was clearly visible. We'll fast-track the lab analysis, Detective Rivera said, carefully taking the bag. But even without it, we have enough for an arrest warrant. Terroristic threats. Stalking. Attempted murder if the toxicology comes back positive. How long? Daniel asked. We can have officers at his last known address within the hour, Chin said. Does he know where you're staying, Miss Sawyer? Mia shook her head. I moved after we broke up. He doesn't have my new address. Good. Stay somewhere else tonight anyway. With family or friends. Mia's throat tightened. I don't really have anyone. Daniel spoke before she could say anything else. She can stay here. I'll get another room on a different floor. Hotel security can monitor the entrances. Rivera nodded approvingly. That works. We'll have a patrol car nearby as well, just in case. They took a few more details: Evan's physical description, his vehicle, known associates. Mia gave them everything she could remember, though it wasn't much. Evan had been good at keeping her isolated. She'd never met his friends. Barely knew where he lived. An hour later, the detectives left with promises to update them as soon as Evan was in custody. Mia sat on the edge of the bed, feeling numb. You should eat something, Daniel said. He'd ordered room service while they waited: sandwiches, fries, soup. Most of it sat untouched on the desk. When's the last time you ate? Lunch, I think. Mia pulled one of the plates toward her and took a bite of a turkey sandwich. It tasted like cardboard, but she forced herself to chew. Daniel sat in the chair across from her. The police will find him. He won't get near you again. You don't know that. No, Daniel admitted. But I know they're taking this seriously. And I know you're not alone anymore. Mia set down the sandwich. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just because I saved your life. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. 3 years ago, one of my employees was assaulted in a parking lot after her shift, he said. She'd reported a customer for harassing her. Management banned him from the location. They thought that was enough. It wasn't. He waited for her. Put her in the hospital. Mia's chest tightened. She sued the company. Settled out of court. I never met her. Never heard her side of the story directly. My lawyers handled everything. Daniel's voice was heavy. I signed the settlement check and went back to quarterly earnings reports. I told myself we'd updated our safety protocols. That it wouldn't happen again. But it did. Different locations. Different circumstances. But the pattern was the same: employees reporting concerns, management doing the bare minimum, problems escalating until someone got hurt. He looked at her directly. I built a company that values efficiency over safety. Profit over people. And I didn't see it because I wasn't looking. That's why you went undercover. I thought I'd find waste. Theft. Maybe some bad managers cutting corners. He laughed bitterly. Instead, I found out someone was trying to kill me because of a policy I implemented from a boardroom 3,000 miles away. And the person who saved my life was about to get fired for breaking protocol. Mia wiped at her eyes. That write-up wasn't your fault. Yes, it was. I created the culture that made Greg think punishing you was the right move. I built the system that let Evan slip through the cracks. Daniel stood and walked to the window. But I can fix it. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But I can start. How? He turned back to her. First, Greg Martinez is going to be terminated. Along with the district supervisor who signed off on Evan's inadequate termination process. They failed at their jobs, and people almost died because of it. You're firing them? I'm holding them accountable. There's a difference. Daniel's voice was firm. Second, I'm implementing a new safety protocol across all locations. Mandatory threat assessments for any termination. Security escorts. Follow-up checks. And employees who report safety concerns will be protected, not punished. Mia stared at him. That's going to cost money. Yes. It is. And it's worth every penny. He pulled something from his laptop bag, a folder with Meridian Hospitality Group's logo on the front. Third, I'd like to offer you a position. What? You saw the danger when no one else did. You acted when it would have been easier to look away. That's the kind of judgment I need. He handed her the folder. I want you to help redesign our employee safety and reporting systems. Work with HR, train managers. Make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else. Mia opened the folder. Inside was a job description, a salary that made her eyes widen, and a benefits package that included health insurance and relocation assistance. I don't have experience with this kind of thing, she said weakly. You have the experience that matters. You've lived it. Daniel's expression softened. You don't have to decide now. Take time. Think about it. But Mia, you deserve better than a write-up and a threat of termination. You deserve recognition for doing something incredibly brave. Mia's hands trembled as she held the folder. For so long, she'd been invisible. Just a waitress. Just someone trying to survive. And now this man, this CEO, was telling her she mattered. That what she'd done mattered. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll think about it. Before she could respond, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted. It's Detective Rivera, he said, answering. Yes? I see. Thank you. He hung up and looked at Mia. They found Evan. He was at his apartment. He resisted arrest, but he's in custody now. Daniel's voice was calm, steady. It's over. He can't hurt you anymore. Mia's breath left her in a rush. She doubled over, hands pressed to her face, and started crying. Not from fear this time. From relief. Daniel stood awkwardly for a moment, then grabbed the box of tissues from the bathroom and set it beside her. Take your time, he said gently. Mia cried until there was nothing left. Until the weight she'd been carrying finally lifted. When she looked up, Daniel was at the window again, giving her privacy. Thank you, she said, her voice raw. He turned. You saved my life, Mia. This is the least I can do. She wiped her eyes and managed a shaky smile. I guess we saved each other. Daniel smiled back. I guess we did. 7 days later. The courtroom was smaller than Mia expected. She sat in the gallery, hands folded in her lap, watching as Evan Marsh was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. He looked different, smaller somehow, diminished without the swagger and threat he'd always carried. His eyes swept the room and landed on her. Mia didn't look away. For the first time in over a year, she wasn't afraid of him. The judge read the charges: attempted murder, stalking, criminal threatening, violating a protective order that had been issued immediately after his arrest. The toxicology report had come back positive. The substance in Daniel's water glass was a powerful sedative mixed with something else, something that would have stopped his heart within minutes. Evan's public defender entered a plea of not guilty, but everyone in the room knew it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. The texts. The security footage placing him at the restaurant. Mia's testimony. Daniel's corroboration. And the glass. The hearing lasted 20 minutes. Bail was denied. Trial date set for February. When they let Evan out, he looked at Mia one more time. This time, she saw what she'd missed before. He wasn't dangerous. He was pathetic. A man who'd tried to control her because he couldn't control himself. Who'd blamed everyone else for his failures. She felt nothing but pity. Outside the courthouse, Daniel was waiting by his car, a different one now. A sleek black sedan that actually looked like something a CEO would drive. How are you? He asked. Good, Mia said. And she meant it. It felt good to see him in handcuffs. Justice tends to feel that way. Daniel opened the passenger door for her. Ready? Ready. They drove across town to Meridian Hospitality Group's corporate headquarters, a glass building downtown that Mia had passed 100 times but never imagined she'd enter. Security waved them through. Employees nodded respectfully as Daniel passed. Mia felt out of place in her simple blouse and slacks, but Daniel had assured her she looked fine. You're not here to impress anyone, he'd said that morning. You're here because you belong here. They took the elevator to the 8th floor. The HR department. Waiting in the conference room were 6 people: the head of HR, 2 regional managers, a lawyer, a security consultant, and a woman Daniel introduced as Patricia Chin, the new chief operating officer. Mia Sawyer, Daniel said, gesturing for her to sit at the head of the table. I'd like you to meet the team you'll be working with. The next hour was a whirlwind. Patricia explained the new safety initiative, a complete overhaul of how Meridian handled employee concerns, terminations, and threat assessments. Every location would have a direct hotline to corporate security. Every termination would require a standardized risk evaluation. Every employee who reported a safety concern would receive immediate protection and support, not retaliation. And we need someone to oversee implementation, Patricia said, looking at Mia. Someone who understands what it's like on the ground. Someone who knows the cost of getting it wrong. Mia had read the job offer a dozen times over the past week. She thought about turning it down. It felt too big, too sudden, too far outside her experience. But then she'd thought about the other servers at Marco's. The kitchen staff. The hosts and dishwashers and bartenders who showed up every day hoping they'd be safe. They deserve better. I'll do it, Mia said. But I have conditions. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. I want to visit every location personally. Talk to employees face to face. Hear their stories. Mia's voice grew stronger. And I want protection for whistleblowers written into company policy. Not just encouraged, mandatory. Anyone who reports a problem gets immunity from retaliation in writing. Patricia glanced at Daniel, who nodded. Done, he said. The meeting continued for another hour, hammering out details. Mia's start date. Her travel schedule. The training programs she'd helped develop. When it finally ended, Daniel walked her to the elevator. That was impressive, he said. The conditions. The confidence. You're going to be good at this. Mia smiled. I'm terrified. That means you care. That's why you'll succeed. The elevator doors opened. Mia stepped inside, then turned back. What about you? She asked. Are you staying undercover anywhere else? Daniel shook his head. No. I learned what I needed to learn. The rest of the work happens here. He paused. But I am making one change. Every quarter, I'm going to spend a week working at a different location. Not undercover. Just present. Listening. That's good. It's overdue. Daniel extended his hand. Welcome to Meridian, Mia. For real this time. She shook it. Thank you. For everything. Thank you for switching that glass. The doors closed between them. 3 months later. Mia stood in front of 200 employees at Meridian's annual company meeting, her hands only slightly shaking as she held the microphone. My name is Mia Sawyer, she began. 3 months ago, I was a waitress who witnessed something terrible and made a choice. I could have stayed silent. I could have looked away. But I didn't. She told them about that night. About the glass. About the cost of speaking up and the greater cost of staying quiet. We've all seen things we weren't sure we should report, she continued. A coworker being mistreated. A safety hazard being ignored. Something that felt wrong but we told ourselves wasn't our problem. She paused. But it is our problem. Because we're not just employees. We're people. And we deserve to feel safe. The room was silent. So I'm asking you to be brave. To speak up. To switch the glass. Mia's voice grew firm. Because the quietest people often see the danger first. And sometimes, one small action can save a life. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Later, as employees filed out, several approached her. A server from Phoenix who'd been harassed by a manager. A cook from Seattle who'd seen safety violations covered up. A host from Miami who'd been afraid to report theft. Mia listened to every story. Took every name. Made every promise. This was her job now. Her purpose. And it had started with a water glass and a choice to do the right thing, even when it was terrifying. Daniel found her as the conference hall emptied. That was incredible, he said. It was honest. Mia gathered her notes. How many new reports came in today? 47. From 16 different locations. Good. We'll handle every 1 inch. They walked out together, into a future neither of them had expected but both had earned. Mia had saved Daniel's life that night, in the restaurant. But in return, he'd given her something equally valuable, proof that her voice mattered. That she mattered. And together, they were making sure no one else would ever have to face danger alone. The glass had been switched. And everything had changed.